Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Web3 Webinar by Ionix Technologies. I'm just going to give a couple of minutes for the other participants to enter, and then we will start the presentation. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Web3 Webinar by Ionix Technologies. This week we're on episode 3. This week we're talking about DAOs and smart contracts. We spoke about DAOs last week, and we got into some detail. And this week, we're going to expand on DAOs and talk more about smart contracts and their functionality and how they're actually the backbone of DAOs and how they allow DAOs to do what they do. So I'll get straight into it. Before that, a quick about us. So our company works with, we're a technology company. We work with startups and enterprise firms. Ionix Technologies is our name. And we deliver Web3 solutions, fintech solutions, and health tech solutions. A little bit about myself. I'll have my contact information up at the very last screen. My name's Sean, and I'm a technology researcher, and I'm a Web3 specialist. That's my area of expertise. I work with Web3 and also emerging technologies. I track a lot of different emerging technologies. So we'll get right into it. We went into this in some detail last week, but I'm going to do a quick recap. So I'll just define a DAO. DAOs are internet native organizations with decentralized leadership and decentralized governance. So what happens is once we codify all our business rules and put them on a blockchain platform, the way to edit and upgrade those rules is based on voting by the community associated with a project. And the way a community can associate with a project is by actually staking their crypto into a DAO, into the treasury of a DAO. DAOs are designed around a mission or a mandate like any other organization. And it's basically just the operational logic or the business logic around that mission, which is codified and put onto a blockchain platform, which then becomes a DAO. So just think of a DAO as the managerial layer where they receive inputs about the business or about their operations, and then they crunch their internal logic, and then they provide outputs. So the DAO provides outputs of what to do next. And it can execute those outputs using some of the crypto that it has in its treasury. So that's kind of a very high level of what a DAO does, how it operates, the environment in which it exists. Smart contracts. Most of you, I'm sure, are pretty familiar with smart contracts, but I'll do a quick recap. Smart contracts are digital contracts where the terms between different users or different parties are set in code. There's efforts in the world of people actually like splitting the screen into a right side and a left side, where on the left side, you just write the legal agreement in English. And then on the left side, it converts that English into smart contracts. This way, some of these smart contracts could actually hold up in a court of law where you can say these two users agreed on this, and there's an English translation of exactly what each term means. So smart contracts can be programmed to self-execute when a set of predefined conditions are fulfilled. This is usually the predefined conditions when either one of them are fulfilled. It's also called a triggering event. So it triggers the smart contract. Smart contracts which exist on blockchain platforms are by nature decentralized and distributed. And because blockchains, most big blockchains rather, are interoperable with one another. So you can kind of have a smart contract sitting on the blockchain of your choice, and it can operate and kind of execute things and buy and sell things on other blockchains using this interoperability feature as well. Lastly, smart contracts can be programmed to trigger other smart contracts. So you could have a smart contract that when the triggering event happens, it creates or triggers other smart contracts to do something else, or it can define a whole set of new conditions when something happens. So you can get into quite complex situations. Complexity is good in this case, where you could define really complex organizational situations or business situations where really complex international transactions are taking place, and all the nuances are defined using smart contracts that either trigger other smart contracts, create other smart contracts, or settle other smart contracts. So all of those things can be programmed using smart contracts. I'll run through a quick example for our viewers to understand how it works. So on the top left, you have two parties agreeing on a contract. And I've kind of put arrows to indicate how it works. So a quick example could be, let's say there's a basketball game and there's two parties saying that I So I say team X is going to win, you say team Y is going to win, and we enter into a contract. And not only do we enter into a contract, we also put money in it. So I bet a Bitcoin, you bet a Bitcoin. So the smart contract now has our code in it, it has our bet in it, and it has the preferred outcomes based on which team wins. And the smart contract also acts as an escrow account where it holds 2 Bitcoins within itself. So once we enter into the contract, the Bitcoin's gone from my wallet, it's gone from your wallet, and now it sits in the smart contract. Parallelly, there's an event outcome, in this case, a basketball game. And let's say we have to choose which oracle. An oracle, I'll get into it in the next slide. An oracle is something that sends real world data into blockchain platforms. So we agree on an oracle, and we agree that when this oracle gives a specific signal, the smart contract executes itself. So the oracle tracks the game. As soon as the game is complete, the oracle announces which team won. And depending on which team won, that signal is sent to our smart contract. That's the triggering event. And as soon as that triggering event happens, the smart contract self-executes, and then it disperses the 2 Bitcoin to either you or me, depending on who won the bet. So that's a very basic example of a smart contract. You can get into multiple layers of complexity with something like this. I've just described the very basic functionality. You could get into smart contracts where the execution upon completion of a contract could be the creation of other smart contracts or the settlement of other complex transactions. So to expand a little bit more on what an oracle is, it's a third-party trusted service that provides smart contracts and other blockchain platforms authenticated sources of external data from the real world. I'll get into examples of this in a couple of slides as well. Oracles can connect to smart contracts with events in the outside world. So they can send data about weather or something else, or an election result, or the outcome of a game, or the price of another commodity into another smart contract. So they can kind of send that data into a smart contract. They're usually triggered by an outside event. So you could say when, like if we go back to the previous example, the triggering event would have been when one of the teams would have won. So when one of the teams won, that triggered that event kind of triggers the smart contract once the API from the oracle hits it and says this team won. Oracles can be created to provide a wide range of data smart contracts. Right now, the space is really expanding and growing fast. So the types of oracles that exist are growing. The number of sensors and fields that they're getting data from are also growing exponentially. I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see that grow really fast. And currently, the Chainlink, as of this recording, Chainlink is the biggest oracle company out there that I know of. But there's many others that are kind of taking shape. But Chainlink's a big one, and our firm has worked extensively with the Chainlink API and with integrating smart contracts with different API calls and different events that Chainlink does offer. So a few examples of oracles is like, as I said earlier, it's weather. It could be weather data. It could be outcome of events, outcome of legal cases, financial statistics, economic data, interest rates, market data, and stuff like that. So just real world data that is used in some form of transaction or some sort of business, or has some implications on something, or has some importance to the world. So all of that data can be codified through sensors, through different mechanisms, through various validators, if you will, and then it could be sent from an oracle into a smart contract. The second point is that it's executed when a predefined conditions is met. So a smart contract is executed when something happens. This could even be, you could even just put a timer on it. You could say, okay, pay my grandchildren X amount of money, like at the stroke of midnight on December 31st, 2025. So that could be a thing too. So it could be, in that case, the triggering event is a specific time, when a specific time is reached. So smart contracts are meant to be executed when a predefined condition is met, or a specific condition that you've agreed upon earlier. It could be a triggering event, it could be a time, it could be something else. But when that thing happens, that's when a smart contract executes itself. And oracles provide the source of data in most cases that allows for that triggering event to happen. So oracles are an integral part of smart contracts, especially when you want to connect smart contracts to the real world and to like the physical realities that surround us. And smart contracts are the building blocks of DAOs. The essential, like the backbone of a DAO is a smart contract. They define the rules of a DAO, as well as how the group's treasury or the DAO's treasury is used. The rules and the logic of the DAO are programmed into the smart contracts. This also kind of cover. It should in a good smart contract or a good DAO, all the eventualities should be covered in the code. If a user tries to do something that's not covered in the logic and the rules of the code, that action will fail. So smart contracts govern the nuances of how a DAO behaves, how a DAO receives information, so the input, and then how a DAO outputs information or gives out instructions on what to do next. So the primary point I want to make is business logic is expressed through smart contracts. So all of the managerial layer is codified and then put in a smart contract. It's expressed like the language of management or the language of the logic is expressed through smart contracts. And the triggering event can also like you can program a smart contract to either execute all of your logic or some of your logic, depending on the triggering event or depending on the intensity of the triggering event. So if I say like if X team defeats Y team by, let's say, like a margin of this, then do this. If not, do this. So I can kind of put like different layers of how a smart contract executes itself based on the triggering event and based on the intensity of the triggering event. So that also opens up a range of new possibilities. So we've been through how oracles are essential for smart contracts. One point I wanted to make sure I covered was that IoT and sensor technology, so sensors across the world, thermometers, pictures, cameras, scanners, barcode readers, QR code readers, mobile phones. There's a lot of different sensors, medical sensors, environmental sensors, industrial sensors. So these sensors basically capture real world data, and then through the IoT functionality, they're able to send this real world data into online digital platforms or blockchains, or other technologies in the metaverse. So the explosion in this space, like the growth in the number of IoT enabled sensors in the world that's going to happen in the next 4 to 5 years, is going to change DAOs and smart contracts, and it's going to really bring the real world much closer to the digital world. So that's a really important point, and that's something to look out for. Right now, Chainlink is the biggest Oracle company that we have, that we kind of work with. There's several oracles that can be set up through Chainlink, and each one can be set up for a different purpose or a different event. And you can also have different oracles, multiple oracles simultaneously feeding data into a DAO. So it's not exclusive to one oracle at one time. You could have multiple streams of data coming in for multiple functions. And depending on the complexity of your DAO, we can build that for you. Through oracles, data is fed into a DAO. I think that's been covered. It's then processed through smart contracts using the DAO's logic and business rules, followed by which instructions are sent out and executed. So that's basically I'm just defining the input. So the input comes in through data, then your DAO crunches some logic, it makes a few business or organizational decisions, and then the output comes in the form of instructions to be executed. So data flows into a DAO and decisions and instructions flow out, in a nutshell. So in conclusion, DAOs offer a new organizational management system. And thanks to the blockchain and thanks to different blockchain platforms, these are distributed, transparent, and automated. So that's an important thing to remember, that the logic of a DAO is transparent. So if you really like a DAO, you can go and look at the logic, or you can go and look under the hood once you go to the blockchain and kind of parse where the DAO has been set up and the different calls it's making and the functionality of it. So they are transparent. That's something to remember. They offer collective risk and reward to their communities based on programmatically executed rules. And smart contracts are where the actions, logic, and terms of the agreement are set in code. DAOs are made possible thanks to smart contracts. So smart contracts are a really important part of DAOs, and they're how DAOs work and why DAOs are able to do what they do. And they can't really function as well as they do without DAOs. So lastly, how we can help. We can help you create DAOs. We can help you manage DAOs. We can help you by advising you on which platforms to use, kind of the nuances of your program. So if we talk about your project or your community and how you guys want to organize as a DAO, we can help with setting that up. We can help with consulting and advice, as well as setting up the governance mechanisms, doing smart contract, creating the smart contracts, auditing the smart contracts, testing the smart contracts, integrating on-chain and off-chain oracles to your smart contracts as well. And then provide design support for your DAO, help you create the treasury, help you create governance systems that manage the treasury, and finally launch your DAO. So we can take your DAO and put it on a blockchain platform, get your community set up around it, and then you're off to the races. So that's how we can help. And I will open it up to questions. If you guys have any questions, please throw it into the comment section in the presentation or the webinar. Before I get into that, I've got some contact information set up on the screen. So my email, inextech.com. You can just go through our website and reach out through there as well. You can ping me on Telegram, LinkedIn, or Twitter as well. Thank you so much. So I'll open it up for questions now. So we have the first question. Are there real life examples of DAO that exist now? There are several DAOs that exist now, and I think one of the biggest DAOs is MakerDAO. Then there's MetaCartel. These are DAOs with so currently I think there's over a few $1 billion of market cap just in DAO projects alone. I think MetaCartel is a really interesting DAO. I think Badger DAO is super interesting as well. It allows DeFi functionality based on people staking their Bitcoin. And there's you know what? Actually, maybe I'll when I make this presentation available, maybe I'll add a list of like my favorite DAO projects, because there's a bunch of them out there. And I'd also advise going and checking out top 10 DAOs based on market cap. That's pretty interesting as well. Smart contracts. So we have another question. Do we have examples of smart contracts? Smart contracts run under the hood. So there are several examples of good smart contracts, but you'd have to look under the hood. So you'd have to go to a blockchain parser and then kind of look under, just go through a smart contract, and you can kind of go through all the logic there. There is, so the next question is there a risk management structure in place in case of coding errors on smart contracts? That's where we could help. So we can kind of help you take your smart contracts, test it, stress test it in different environments with different inputs, and kind of see what the results would do. And we can prove that the smart contracts are safe before uploading them to a platform. In the case of other examples where people have put smart contracts or faulty smart contracts or incomplete smart contracts online, that is, it does take some time to resolve, because the community has to vote on proposals that update the code. So a decision is much faster when it's just one person, but when it's an entire community trying to coordinate around something, sometimes it takes a while, and then those hours and minutes become essential, and it could prove to be a security risk for your DAO as well. So the next question is, who vets the accuracy aspect of a smart contract? Our team can help you guys do that. But in the cases of other DAOs, I'm assuming the developers and the teams that are initially setting the DAOs up vet the accuracy of a DAO, of a smart contract within a DAO. But there have been cases of faulty code. So that's definitely the biggest risk when you're looking at creating a DAO or participating in a DAO. Any more questions, team? All right, so we have another question that in case of triggers, is an oracle required? In most cases, an oracle is required, especially when it's offline information that's coming in. But a smart contract can also be programmed to execute at a certain time. So if there's a condition that doesn't require an external input, if it's an internal condition that you can pretty easily come up with, for example, time. So you can say, I want the smart contract to execute itself within 3 days. As long as it doesn't need any more information, it has all the data that it needs, it can execute without an oracle. But in most cases, for it to be interactive and for it to function in the real world based on real world input, it does need an oracle. But if I have something simpler where I'm saying someone's done the work and I want to pay them 10 days later just because that's the term of our agreement, then I can say I can create a smart contract that says pay person X in 10 days. And if I do nothing else, it'll just pay the person in 10 days. So in a case like that, an oracle is not required. But for more advanced functionality and kind of building DAOs and smart contracts that are connected to the real world, oracles are required. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I guess that's all the questions we have for today. I'll join you next week with episode 4 of the Web3 webinar. And in case you have any questions, all my contact information is on your screen. So give me a shout and we'll chat more there. Thank you so much.